Welcome back to part two of the session with Pastors Seth and Angela Atkins. Seth, you were talking about church planting, and you feel that this is the greatest way to spread the gospel. Where do you think that came from? What in your experiences have gotten you to this point?
Do you want to take this one?
Well, back in Florida, one of the things that we learned under the ministry that we were in there with Restoration was just that every member, every person in the church is meant to be a minister. Mm-hmm. That every one of us has been given gifts, and like there's no junior Holy Spirit, right? Like even our kids can minister. And so that was a huge part of our heart. In fact, even before we were part of Restoration, I remember you and I helping with some youth group situations, and we went through some church hurt. We went through a lot of stuff. But I remember the first instruction that we heard clearly from the Lord as we prayed and we fasted and we just kind of asked him, Lord, what do you want to see happen with these youth that we're working with? And I feel like I think back, and the very first instruction he gave us was go after the one. Yeah. Go after the one. And 20 years later, I think it's the same thing that we're doing. And even though maybe it's on a bigger scale, and we're looking at planting churches places and going internationally places, but like even when I went to Mexico, last week and ministered healing to those women, it was still about the one, getting loved on, the one. In fact, we met with somebody for 3.5 hours just to see them come to a place of freedom. And I think it's so important that, like, the bigger we get, like if we're faithful and God gives us more or whatever, that we never lose the focus that it's about the one. And then what I was thinking about in the process of him church planting and all of that back when we learned every member is a minister, a huge part of your desire is to not to be the front person, but to actually see people for who they are and call out the gifts that are inside of them and want to see them come alive, really come alive and become the person they're supposed to be and create teams. Because that's something we learned in Bradenton was, you guys were part of our team, right? You and Bethany, and we still have relationships. People like Melissa and Chris, and then we've got Ashley in Texas. And, that's neat that we've been able to keep those relationships. But it was a struggle, like you guys all moved away, right? We had all of our team and y'all moved away. So one of the things we really asked the Lord when we got to the river was, Lord, if you want us to be here, would you please bring us a team? Wow. And within 6 months, that we had like a 6-month interim that we said, okay, we'll do this thing, right? But Lord, you really have to show us, confirm to us this is what we're supposed to do, because we don't want to just put our family through a hard time without knowing that your favor is on it. And by the time those 6 months were over, we had people who came up to us and said, we feel called to be alongside you. We went from 0 kids, maybe a grandchild or so coming into the congregation, to like 20 kids, in 6 months. And so all of the things we wanted to see in team happen. And one of our desires is to see team continue to happen, like not just plant a church and send one person out there to die, but create a team of people with different gifts who can complement each other and help each other.
Absolutely. So you guys talk about being youth pastors, you've been youth pastors at heart. Why is that so important to you guys? Not just because that's what you love to do, but like why?
Well, first of all, I think that the young people themselves they're raw talent, and they're powerful. And I just, like right now we're actually doing youth pastoring in our church too. We've taken that role for a season just because there was a need for us to step in and kind of support that.
We're growing that team,
and so I love it. I love these young people, because when they're coming into the concepts of who God is and they're encountering Him, they're having conversations with God, their hearts are being opened up and transformed, they're seeing the gifts for the first time, and they're seeing who they are for the first time, and there's that sense of awe and wonder of like, I can't believe it's like this with God.
Yeah.
There's really no sweeter.
Yeah.
There's really no sweeter experience than someone just coming out and having this experience, having this connection with God. So, and I think that for a church to be alive, for a church to be making an impact in its community, if it's not impacting in that area, it's lying to itself.
Right.
Because then it's a one generation church.
That's it right there.
Yeah. I absolutely love working with my kids. And the other day, Riley, we taught them. They went on a missions trip in May, and so we were teaching them. One of the things we were teaching them is how to hear from God. And so we were sitting around, and this is even before we had Ian, and I was telling them, like, when you're praying for someone, listen to what the Holy Spirit wants to say to you. There's a small voice, still small voice that comes. It may just be a word, it may just be a flash around. And so we started teaching them that. Literally a couple weeks ago, I think it was either Ian or Bethany wasn't feeling good. Riley comes up to her and says, "Can I pray for you?" And says, "Can I put my hands on you?" All the things that we teach you. And she began to pray and just speak a little soft prayer, and it was so beautiful and powerful. I think there's something to seeing young people not only become who they are, but becoming who they are while getting to know who Jesus is.
Amen.
That is something that's beautiful and powerful. So I love the fact that you guys are pastoring this church and pastoring kids at the same time. I want to shift a little bit, because one of the things that Jesus did when he was in ministry was set the captives free. But one of the captives was women. Angela, I know you are passionate about seeing women set free.
Yes.
From all the conferences you've been going to and the things that you've been pouring to. What is driving you with this? Obviously you're a woman, but what is the heart behind?
We gotta make that clear.
Yes.
Absolutely a woman.
Yes.
Yes. Well, one thing that's interesting is my dad was a doctor, and he was very influential in my life. He loved the Lord, and he really taught me to be bold. He really cared for people, and one of the things he always did, for years I remember him working, I think he worked 17 years in the emergency room, and he never hesitated to ask anybody that came through, like, "Hey, can I pray for you?" Like, it didn't matter. He wasn't worried about putting his job at stake.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously he never pushed anybody. If they didn't want prayer, he wasn't going to pray for them. But I can't tell you how many people came up to me and just said, "Man, I'm so grateful that, your dad was there in our time of need."
Absolutely.
And I think that really hit my heart. And one time when I was talking with the Lord, I'd never really had a passion for medical field. I didn't want to go into nursing. But the Lord told me one time, he said, blessings flow from generations. Just, we talk sometimes about curses needing to be broken from generations. But I don't know that we talk enough about the blessings that can also flow when we make those choices of wisdom. And so I just felt like the Lord told me, Angie, I'm giving, there's a generational blessing of healing in your life. But I've called you to heal the heart. And Seth's dad was also a doctor. And it's so interesting that a lot of our ministry does end up in the area of healing the heart, setting the captives free. And so that's kind of where it birthed.
And it's kind of the background of where we come from with restoration, which was a lot of inner healing, and it's so beautiful to see you guys come full circle into a place where I can only imagine. I mean, we all have our difficulties, but coming into a place of Delta, Ohio, where I can only imagine that people feel forgotten, people feel like they are not worthy, and to minister that to them is beautiful.
And one of the things when we first came to Delta that really grabbed my heart was how much I saw God loved these people and how much value He
Absolutely.
had for them, but how little value they could see in themselves.
Yeah.
And I did that really connected with my heart was I want people, I want women, people in general, but women especially to know their value. And when we first came into restoration, we were pretty broken.
Yeah.
We had a passion for youth and ministry, but we were like to the place where we had gone through some really rough church situations, and we were kind of like, do good churches exist?
Yeah.
Like, do we even want to go to church? Like, God, we love you, but we're not sure we love your people anymore. And when we walked into restoration, it was just that. It was a place of restoration. And I literally cried buckets the first couple of months we were there. And God did such a healing work in my heart.
Yeah.
And then I went out to California for some healing training, and every time I got into this kind of ministry of healing, my heart got so repaired and life began to change for me. And I saw myself in a different place. I wasn't tormented by lies like I was before. The freedom that I experienced was incredible, and I couldn't help but want to bring that to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And that's really where it all started, was my own healing.
Yeah. So we live in this hyperbolic social media age where a lot of people are either deconstructing their faith or walking away in general.
Yeah.
Talk about what has kept you in those rough times, because we've seen plenty of pastors that have just quit and gone off to do other things,
Have you ever quit?
or people that have left the faith in general. Talk about what has kept you.
Well, I remember when I first started planning churches, I quit every day. I quit every single day. And I was like, you can quit today, we'll see you back at work tomorrow. And I go back to this Psalm 37, where it says, dwell in the land and do good, and feed on His faithfulness.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, there's a statement there that says, you do your part and you trust God to do His part. And I think for me, being able to commune with God and hear His voice and that kind of stuff has sustained me. And Him reminding me of how much He loves me, and that same experience, how much He loves them, I think is the fuel that keeps me going. Not as I have to do for them because they need me.
Right.
That's just not it.
No,
because if they need me, this is just broken. Like, you want more of Seth? Well, prepare for grossness. But the reality is of knowing how much they need Him. I think that's what has sustained me through all the hard stuff. Because I mean, honestly, it's not just church. People are hard.
Yes.
It is. It's like, jobs and work and life and just in general, people are just, they're difficult. And without love and without that sustainability of relationship with God and realizing that I need to be forgiven, they need to be forgiven, and there's bigger than what we've experienced.
Yeah.
I think that's what sustained me.
Yeah.
Is that He wants to minister to them. He wants to love them. And I hold the key. I'm the gatekeeper of that love.
Absolutely.
And I can choose to be petty and angry and frustrated and you know what? He's cool.
Right.
And when I choose to not get in the way, He's even happier.
Absolutely.
But it's as much about me as it is about them.
Yes. And Angie, of course, we've seen wives totally wreck ministries and things like that. What has kept you in the fight, and what has kept you supporting and reaching and all of that?
Yeah, definitely the voice of the Lord. I think early in ministry, we took a class called Hearing God's Voice, and it changed the way we did ministry because we realized, like, this isn't just something that every once in a while we can have this moment where we're like connecting with God, but like He wants to talk to us not just through His word, but talk to our hearts, connect with us. And there's some really hard times. There were some really dry times, and even this morning, it's interesting because the thought process I was having with the Lord was, sometimes we have to walk through a crushing season
Mm-hmm.
to actually be able to pour out the fragrance.
Yeah.
And my middle name is Marie.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was young, I didn't understand all that this meant.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was young, the Lord took me through the definition of what Marie was, which is the same thing as Mara.
Mm-hmm.
In the Bible, it talks about
Mhm.
Naomi,
It
saying,
is,
call me
yes.
Mara. It's bitter.
Right.
But it's actually comes from this plant, myrrh plant. The root word was from the myrrh plant. And the myrrh plant had to be crushed in order for the very expensive fragrance
Yeah.
to come out of it.
Absolutely.
And the same way grapes have to be crushed for like really good wines to
Right.
come forth. And so I think recognizing that there's a process and it's not a fun one, and it's not like God necessarily is like, oh, I want you to crush.
Mm-hmm.
But he's in it with us. And when we let him work that beautiful forgiveness,
Yeah.
like, yes, I'm hurt. But am I going to choose to be offended?
Mhm.
No, I choose not to be offended, and I'm going to let this forgiveness wash through me. And then all of a sudden, I'm showing people something that they're like, this couldn't have come from Angie.
Mm-hmm.
This had to be Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the open door
Yeah.
to be able to talk with them, you
Yeah.
know. So I guess that's what's got me through
That's awesome.
that, and my relationship with him.
Yeah.
Like
She
it's,
has the best husband in the whole world. So.
like he and I probably. Do you think we could have made it through alone?
No, no way.
Two are better than one. And
Absolutely.
I mean, when I have a really down time, there's been very few moments in life where we've both been beat down at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like those moments have been the hardest.
Yes, of course.
And I think
yeah.
there have been times when we fight with each other. I mean, we're honest.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
But I think more often than not, we fight for each other.
Absolutely.
And I think that has been, I think that's been a key for us. Being married is hard. Being married in ministry is super hard.
And I have 6 kids on top of
Yeah,
that.
it's like,
Yeah.
good Lord, what were
There's
you
going to be
thinking?
misunderstandings,
Oh,
right?
yeah, I mean, communication's so easy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've been the biggest cheerleader in my life. You've been the biggest encourager. Like when I felt like I'm a total failure, I can't get back up and do this again.
Absolutely.
You're the one who's like, God created you for this. You
Absolutely.
have a gift. Like get up. Be this person you're created to be.
No, it's true, man. I totally believe in you. This book that she wrote, oh my gosh.
Mhm.
And she's written this new curriculum for training and inner healing and stuff. It's beautiful. And I'm having these visions of being like, I'll be at home with the kids while you go travel the world. And you know what though? I'm totally cool with it. Because I'm like, this stuff needs to get out there. And when we were in Mexico, that's what we were doing. We did 2 workshops. And I had a men's conference, which was awesome. But I mean, it started off going down there for her to train.
Yeah, they actually invited me to come to share this healing workshop.
Mhm.
And it motivated me to put it together. Like I've been doing the coaching for a while, but I hadn't actually put together the material.
Mhm.
And so it motivated me to put together this material that now we can use even in small group format.
But we watched it. I watched people connect with the material
Mhm.
and open their hearts up and open their eyes up, man. And I was just like, this stuff, this is the Lord.
It was
Th-
pretty
this-
precious.
This is definitely the hand of God. It was
Absolutely.
beautiful. So I'm cheerleader because it's legit.
Absolutely.
It's the real deal. It's the move of God. So I'm down. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, this past year has been I wouldn't say a struggle, but it has been very different. I felt called to leave my job with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and honestly in October. Didn't actually leave until December. Found out we were pregnant.
That in itself.
That in itself. is-
Dude, that's awesome and terrifying all at the same
That is
time.
awesome in itself. The year before that, I think I turned down 4 jobs.
I remember
Just
that.
because I did not feel that was what was God's calling me to do. Obviously, it is to be a stay-at-home dad right now because my kids need a lot. What is God calling you guys to at this moment, this season
Oof.
of life? Because this is where I am stay-at-home dad and biggest supporter of my wife who has her dream job. And we have kids that need me basis. What is God calling you to?
That's a tough question.
A loaded question.
There's
Yes,
a lot of things going on there, but I think one of the things that I did early on in our ministry, and I blew it. I really did sacrifice the relation with my kids on the altar of ministry.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, hey, you guys are important, but me doing this is importanter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I was like, oh, in hindsight, now I blew it.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is this the season I'm in now. I'm home. And if I am gone, it's you know every few months. It's not every other week like it was for whatever.
Right, yeah.
And now it's like I'm at my son's basketball games, and I'm gonna go keep the books from my daughter's basketball games, and my little girl is in dance. And I need to go to the recitals. And, there's all these things that are happening.